This is Elevator People, conversations about taking ideas to the next level on behalf of visionary leaders. I'm your host, PJ Simmons, and I serve as VP of Marketing at Whiteboard, a creative agency serving visionaries seeking to make vision visible. From the outside, B2B marketing often looks like a cold, calculated world. Product specs, gated PDFs, endless sales decks. But what if there's a different way, a more human way? A way where storytelling, real storytelling, becomes your company's most powerful growth asset. That's the bet Abby Murray made. After years working inside the machine, as a marketer, a founder, and now the CEO of Story Arb, Abby saw what most B2B brands were missing. Not better tools, not louder ads, but a clearer, more honest way to connect with the people they serve. And she built a company to do just that. In today's conversation, we talk about why so many B2B teams struggle to tell compelling stories, how Abby's team helps marketers move from reactive content chaos to a strategic flywheel, and why reframing your messaging around the reader, not your product, might be the most valuable marketing move you can make this year. It's a conversation about clarity, craft, and the kind of content that actually earns trust in a noisy world. This is Abby Murray. Well, Abby, thank you so much for joining me on Elevator People. Excited to have you on. I've been seeing your stuff and interacting on LinkedIn and what you're doing with Story Arb. So maybe to kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself and describe the work that you do at Story Arb.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Well, I am Abby Murray. I have been a serial entrepreneur with a huge love for brand and storytelling since the start of my career. I've got three kiddos, a husband, and a dog. We're based in the Midwest in a sweet little lake town south of Minneapolis in Minnesota, and um, have been really focused on B2B and B2B marketing since my start as an employee of a financial services company all the way to today, founder of my second B2B agency, Story Arb. So a lot of different things along the way, but that's the high level bird's eye view of Abby Murray.
That's awesome. And Story Arb, obviously, the name gives credence to kind of what you guys focus on and serve with B2B. Um, where's the name come from? What's kind of the core competency focus that y'all provide B2B organizations with?
Yeah. The name is ARB is short for arbitrage. So we're arbitraging the stories of great brands and insights of experts to translate that into value for a brand. And our work is really centered around, again, B2B, very focused there. And our work is supporting B2B marketers in-house, standing up content motions that really up level their storytelling around the brand, and most importantly, speaking 90% of value add content to the ICP that they're after. And that's really one of the key obsessions and differentiators with us and the way that we produce the content. And the other component to our offering is a very specific set of content formats. So we focus on three core content formats: email newsletter, more editorial style, executive and company social, and then long form content published to the site like a blog, but in the form of playbooks and guides that are supporting the ICP and their pain points. So those three content formats kind of stand up what we call this our content flywheel that become a compounding asset for these B2B marketers and the companies that we're supporting.
Awesome. I love the nicheness and the focus. One of the things, and I'm starting to see this, you guys are probably starting to see it more, but in more recent years, a conversation and a need around storytelling from B2B organizations, which to say it bluntly, B2B organizations don't necessarily have the best track record for telling great stories. So why for you? You come from this space. This is your second agency.
Mhm.
What in your purview is the reason for the power of stories and why they can be so powerful for B2B? Why'd you lean into that area?
Because it's so hard. And it's especially hard for internal marketers to have the bandwidth and capacity to take a step back and be really strategic and be really um, proactive in the strategy they're setting up, because so often they're a very, very small team of one, even in a large organization. And so they're trying to do so many things, and what happens is they just become reactive and trying to get content out, and that loses efficacy and dilutes the story itself. It's not that they can't, it's typically that they don't have the time. And
Mhm.
we know that if the right story is told in the right framing, that really can speak to the buyer and support the buyer through their journey as they make decisions around the platforms that they need to use and the platforms that will support their day jobs. And so I guess the answer to that is one, because it's really hard, and two, what's hard is good. And if the framing of those stories is done right, it drives tremendous value to the company, drives tremendous value to that end user, that reader, that ICP that's looking to improve their day-to-day job. And me as a marketer can empathize with that a ton. And that's probably why I have such a passion for it, because I've been in those shoes and I know how hard it is to stand that type of content up. So we at Story Arb can become that motion that supports them in getting that out the door the way that they know is of most value to the company, and to the reader that they're
Yeah,
speaking to. Yeah.
that's good. That's good. Well, I'm excited about diving into a bit of the how-tos, best practices of just things that you're learning from this space. It sounds very similar to really a lot of the reasoning of why we started this podcast, on why you started Story Arb. You felt a certain frustration within your past experiences. You're like, is it supposed to be like this? Maybe there's a better way. I believe there's a better way. So I'm going to go help. I feel like my current state in my career is just a version of trying to help my earlier version within
Totally.
my
Isn't that
career
the truth?
trajectory. It's like if I just had this when I was at this level, like life. Oh my gosh, maybe a little bit more stress. Context around elevator people is this whole podcast is about inspiring and equipping other marketers, growth strategists, etc., who steward a vision on behalf of a visionary, an executive leader, a larger organization. So they may not be the quintessential example that we use, the guy or the gal on stage, but that they're the empowering piece of carrying that out. Specifically around stories, you guys work with a lot of executives, high growth marketers who are leading and stewarding big visions, um, but to your point, may struggle to articulate it in their content. What are maybe some common gaps that you have seen, or that you see between vision, um, what an organization is wanting to do and the life change that they're wanting to help make in the world,
Mhm.
and the actual story or the messaging itself? Where do they struggle in finding that, and how does Story Arb come alongside of them to bridge the gap between those two things?
Yeah. I mean, I think to my last point, a lot of it is just time. They have the expertise to do it, they just don't have the time. But I think the other component to that, and I would say the most common mistake made in storytelling, especially on the B2B side for whatever reason, is it becomes more product marketing,
Mhm.
and in what I say, inwardly focused versus outwardly focused. And I think that it takes an extra step and thoughtfulness to think through who you're talking to and what value you can provide to them. And the value so often defaults to, oh, I have this great product that I can offer to them. I have awesome features that will solve their life problems. I have this, I can do this. And so the marketing becomes that messaging. It is very inwardly focused, really looking at me and, hey, here's how we work. Here's our product. Here's how we can help you, instead of looking at them and saying, hey, here is an expert who has walked in your shoes. Here is how they accomplished or overcame this problem that you're probably experiencing today. Now go take and run with this thing. And high level, this is the way we accomplish that at Story Arb is through SME interviews. And I didn't mention that in earlier describing our content motion, but one of the key ways to do that is by setting up interviews, just like this one, setting up interviews with experts, extracting their insights and translating that to value add for that individual that is being spoken to, the ICP, ideal customer profile of that company. And so one, it's time, and two is framing around less inward focus and more outward focus on what the customer actually needs, what pain points they're facing, and providing insights from experts that solve those problems for them. And oh, by the way, that business that we're working with is likely the backbone or a component of the solution, but we're not starting with that. We're starting with solution oriented, value driven content to that ICP that can go, oh my God, yes, that is a problem for me. I can take and run with this, apply it to my day job, and I'm better for it. And now I'm going to remember that brand because they're continually delivering me value that makes my life easier on the day to day. And so I think the two biggest gaps there would be, time, resources to get it done yourself internally, but framing around the story itself, which is not about you, it's about them.
That's great. That's great. Timing, framing, and then where Story Arb comes in. Obviously, you help with those two value props,
Yeah.
but the additional one, and you hinted at this, and I would love to maybe transition into processes and frameworks.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this concept that I learned from David Baker and Blair Enns, and it's this concept of don't worry about eating your veggies, which is, you have a whiteboard, you got 15,000 different marketing ideas and tactics that you could do, but realistically, based on your personality profile, your time, your capacity, your skill set, which ones can you actually accomplish? So like just eat the meat that's on the plate. For those of you, I guess, who aren't vegetarians, I have no other illustration to give to you. But what I do like about Story Arb and what you guys are doing for marketers and organizations is it's not simply, or it doesn't appear to me, just a blank canvas of strategy where you're just, let's poke holes in a couple of things and figure out what sticks. Like there's a very methodical process. You talked about interviews being one of those. You talked about capitalizing on timing, and then the deliverables, the three content that makes up your content flywheel. There's very specific pillars that you then go and create content for. Break that down for us. What does your process look like walking alongside of these high growth marketers or executives at B2B companies, and how are you unearthing these insights, and then what are you turning them into for your clients?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, overall, we are taking these experts, we're interviewing them on a regular basis, translating them into derivative long form content that then waterfalls into those other formats, both social and newsletter. And those compounded value over time. So we're extracting maybe not like the deepest of dive long form quarterly white paper every time, but nuggets of information that compound in value over every weekly release, for example. Um, our approach to getting all of that set up is incredibly important to the process. And even efficacy and work that we deliver to clients. During our first month together, and month 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, but for purposes of illustration, we'll look at the implementation month. And that month is incredibly important for setting the foundation for the work together. And anybody can take this framework and run with it. Um, but we found through we've been alive as Story Arb for 2 years now, and this implementation month was implemented probably midway through, after we realized how critical it was to start slow, not fast, with the content that we were creating. And so our first month together is all about building the narrative, understanding the framing most important to the ICP, understanding the most important critical pain points that we want to be supporting that ICP with. And so in month one together, we are setting and codifying that strategy with the client. We start with just high level overview, capturing of the goals of the client, who their ICP is, really defining that market of one, and then talking through the 3 to 5 pain points that matter most to our client and to their respective clients. So we document and codify all of that for the client. Then we work through tone of voice, and tone of voice is really, really critical in making sure that that narrative is framed in the right way for that client in that vertical, with all the little nuances of either their brand and the position that they want to take in the marketplace, or the industry itself, and maybe what's really important and top of mind for 2025, which might be different in 2026 for that same client, right? So really getting to know who they are as a brand, who their customers are, what they care about. Next step, then we do a competitor analysis and a content analysis on some of the key brands and inspiration that they want to emulate, for example. So maybe we look in their space, but also, and oftentimes more importantly, informs the strategy, is the inspiration that they share with us. So maybe it's a tech platform, but their inspiration is Nike. It can be adjacent to or completely irrelevant to the brand, but we can pick up notes from the brands that they want to emulate, the voice they want to carry through the content. And we put together a tone of voice, and kind of calibrate with the client week 2 and 3 on those things. Take a look at some of their competitors and find holes in the marketplace that we can then fill with content, so they're setting themselves apart and really unique out there to be a little deeper niche and connect with their market of one a little tighter than the broad strokes that we try to get away from with the content that we're standing at. So that's all codified. And the funnest part, there's some tone calibration in there. So we do some A/B testing right out of the gate. By week 3, the client is actually looking at content and saying, yes, this, not that, yes, this, never that, which is super helpful in just us being able to be more self-sufficient as we get rolling. And probably the funnest part is figuring out who the experts are that we want to interview. So we do that through basically we're reverse engineering the pain points into who we want to talk to. So we map out the use case for the product, the pain point itself, how the buyer is feeling in that moment, and then we say, okay, this is something we want to talk about a little bit more for them because they'll care and it'll be very valuable to them. And then we reverse engineer, okay, who is the expert that we can talk to extract this type of knowledge. And those experts that we interview can be internal folks, oftentimes, right? A CTO, chief product officer, CMO, CEO, founder can look a lot of different ways. Um, and even more boots on the ground type folks that are really implementing the work. So even managers that are actually touching the work. So it can be even more tactical. We take a look at that. We then reverse engineer those SMEs based on that. Internally, external folks are awesome sources. Happy customers, of course, those friendlies that have been there, done that, and been successful. Those become kind of that case study version, but more framed at, hey, this customer is doing an amazing thing in in your world, and they've lived your pain point. Here's how they've tackled it. We will even tap into like their account based list and marketing list and say, hey, this person is a great client for us, and um, we'll call on them as experts and say, hey, we love what you're doing in this space. We're publishing this piece on XYZ. Would love to chat with you and pick your brain on how you overcame this obstacle or worked through this pain point or set up this process. So that does a lot of good for the company in, their demand generation, but also for the end user and gaining expertise and from that individual. And then anyone in their network, right? So these companies have thought leaders in their network. They have strategic partners. Those are other great sources of insights that we can then map to and interview them to extract the story we want to tell.
I love it. And then that culminates into how many content, I don't even know if this is the right terminology, if you guys
Yeah.
call them content pillars or content channels. What does
Yeah.
that then culminate into?
Yeah, great question. So I would say clients have anywhere from 3 to 5 content pillars that are specific to some type of pain point, right? So if you think about pain points and pillars, they can become one and the same.
Hmm.
Um, each interview that we run is very structured. So we're able to pull from that what we call content kits. So that waterfall of content, that flywheel, each piece within that is one piece of a single content kit. And so with these interviews, we're able to extract both a tactical and a strategic narrative from that. And that translates to 2 content kits that waterfall into, all of those parts and pieces. So if we are interviewing a subject matter expert and we're extracting a strategic playbook for that specific piece of the interview, that looks higher level, right? So it's looking higher level at the way that they thought about the problem. And that might be great for, I should think of an example, but that might be, let's think about just Story Arb in our own ICP. So we're talking to marketers, right? And I'm interviewed right now. The strategic playbook that would be extracted from this interview would be like, okay, how do you think about setting your strategy as a brand? How do you think about it? What are the things like the framing of the messaging? How are you supposed to think about it? What is the approach that you take? Very high level that a CMO can find really valuable. But then you can also extract the tactical playbook, which is like, okay, how do you set up the foundation? What are the brand artifacts you need to codify in month 1 to even get this thing off the ground, right? Step 1, step 2. First we interview, or first we codify tone of voice, then we evaluate competitors and inspiration accounts. We extract opportunity out of that. We develop the content series from that, develop the pillars from that, right? So now you're taking a step-by-step approach to
Hmm.
actually implement this framework. That would be the tactical that the CMO again finds of great value, but is able to ship to their team and go, hey, now you've got the play-by-play here. Take and run with step 1 through 5, and let's roll with this thing, right?
Yeah.
So those become two parts in the same interview that we're able to extract and develop into content kits. And then we're releasing those on a weekly or biweekly basis, depending on the client's tier, which is all relevant to content production, how much they're going to put out there.
That's awesome. Um, I came across a recent article this week, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. And I'm going to have to find where this is resourced from. I can't even remember where I found it. But the premise was on the importance of creating heavy things. And the illustration that they gave was, more often not, literal physical heavy things tend to have more value. You think of gold, you think of when a person is accepting an Oscar, like maybe the first thing they say is, "Oh, I didn't realize how heavy this thing was." And you talked about at the very beginning of this conversation why you chose to take the business in this direction. You said because it's hard. And I would almost make the synonymous description of hard being heavy. And here at Whiteboard and Elevator People, we use the terminology of meaningful. And it's the digging, the unearthing, the thinking through what matters to the client. How do you pair or what matters to the ideal customer profile? How do you pair that with the expertise and the skill set internally at the team? This approach to marketing, I always tell people all the time, I came into this space at the worst possible time to learn marketing. I came in at the peak of growth hacker, bro culture, throw whatever into Facebook ads, and it would literally just
Yeah.
print money. And so you
Yeah.
didn't learn the how do I really unearth the insights from what customers need and really learn to speak their language. I would just maybe, I know it's kind of an off the wall question, but hear your perspective on your philosophy around the value of the type of marketing work that you're doing. Um, your current philosophy on the state of marketing, are you seeing a shift in the desires of the trends, both on the consumer side as well as marketers, as it pertains to this whole concept of like leaning into the hard stuff, tapping into adding value to people in its most truest sense versus trying to hack our way to growth day in and day out.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And then all of a sudden, performance marketing had its moment. It was the only thing you did, and you just poured more money on, and you had returns, and your ROAS was beautiful, and all of a sudden there were diminishing returns, and you're frantically figuring out what's going on, right? Like, oh, our targeting's wrong. We need to broaden targeting. Well, then that dilutes efficacy too, right? But you're spending more money and so I think it was a really interesting time. There's a huge shift happening. I think everybody's talking about it, which is really exciting. Where all of a sudden now we have to care a great deal about not just pushing ads out there about our product that we can pay to play and put it in front of our buyer and see what sticks. Now we have to really care about what the ad says, right?
Mhm.
And is it resonating in a way that's tapping into what they actually need versus what we do? And those are two different ways of framing.
Yeah.
And um, and so that's kind of the direction really that we're taking at Story Arb, which is okay, now we're exiting this performance marketing world because it's hard to compete and we're re-entering this organic world where we just care about a very specific group of people, your market of one, deep niche, deep
Mm.
insights, what's heavy there and of great value is not surface level 201, 301 level content that they can get anywhere and they can just enter into an AI chat and have it spit out all sorts of insights for them. But going a level 2, 3 levels deeper with experts who have been in the field for 20, 30 years And all of a sudden, that content is so much more valuable because A, it's net new every time. We're taking it from someone's brain. We're not
Mhm.
regurgitating
Yeah.
information. But B, it's getting to a 501, 601, 701 level of expertise that is of incredible value, again, to the reader, but also to the brand. Because now the brand has credibility and authority because they're pushing out this content from these experts, right?
Mhm.
And it's net new every time. And so I think the heavy there, the weight of that is such gold because we're able to just get deeper insights from someone who's again been in the shoes of that ICP, and the ICP is looking to them as a leader in the space, and can kind of come alongside them and help them
Yeah.
navigate challenges in their job. So I don't know if that directly answered your question, but I think that that extra click is hard to do and
Mhm.
execute on.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to be able to do that
Yeah.
for brands, because it does take an extra step. And I think um that extra step uh is what carries so much weight with the content that we're producing.
That's so good. That's so good. This word expertise is becoming more and more common. Um, in my circles, something that I'm hearing more. And what I'm hearing is that expertise truly is differentiation in just a world of noise. Um, to be different is not about screaming louder or brighter or bigger.
Mhm.
I think you're spot on. Is that um, trust is developed through deep expertise in articulation, and through your guys' viewpoint, story, in in sharing that expertise. And so I love that. Well, one thing that I would like to hear, and I don't even know if you guys do this, but as you're navigating, unearthing expertise, telling stories around brands and organizations, are you seeing a shift with internal expert thought leaderships where the personalities are carrying the maybe a bit of the weight of the brand equity, in some form or fashion, if not a lot for today's brands? So thought
Lot.
leadership. I have a I have a weird, uh I don't know, the term personal brand irks me quite a bit. I have a weird relationship with it, but just for argument's sake, maybe we'll throw that into the ringer as that. Are you guys seeing that shift? And if so, how are y'all planning or serving your clients in that arena?
Yeah. I mean, it is a incredible another incredible value and huge amplifier of a brand
Hmm.
is if an individual in-house, an executive, starts talking out there. And
Mm.
our go-to channels are Twitter and LinkedIn for B2B purposes, so that's where our audience is. But uh hell yeah, it's insane what that can do um to lead flow and demand gen and just building
Yeah.
audience, and our whole I mean the whole story around Story Arb, or the Arb, the whole story around the Arb was built and started because of this transition from brand to human, right? Where B2B is was, I think this has changed significantly, and our content's catching up with it and our strategies catching up with it still, but B2B was so focused on I'm selling to a company, I'm selling to a
Hmm.
company, I'm selling to a company. And marketing was then like, we're selling to a company, we're selling to a
Hmm.
company. And that's like how B2B got its name, right? Now we're seeing and realizing, and I don't know why it took so long, but now the common language here is like, oh, I'm a B2B marketer, but I'm selling to a human, and the person
Mhm.
inside that company is still a human, and I need to talk to the human in order for this content to resonate and this marketing strategy to resonate. And so um, you see this with executive social, for example, which is where we started. We started by supporting B2B executives with their personal brand, cringy or not, personal
It
brand
is what
on,
it is.
yeah, exactly, on Twitter and LinkedIn. And we were supporting their story and very similar approach to what we do today for the company and the content, but we were just doing that for the executive. And crazy success
Mm.
for these executives in driving lead flow for their company or raising the bar for investor relations, whatever their goal was, right? That personal content that they were pushing out on their individual page was working, is working. It's crazy how effective it is. And so the whole idea in our metamorphosis at Story Arb was these content teams are going, oh my God, you're writing this stuff for our executive. Can you help us write for our own company profile? Can you help us write this newsletter? Can you help us write this? And so we fanned out our offering because we were like, wait a second. Yes,
Mhm.
if we can support the whole company motion under the same idea that we're talking to humans and we're supporting that individual and we can help support the executive's presence as well as the company presence, and they're all connected. What power that can bring to a brand and the efficacy of that content. So today, we still support the executive because it is incredible power to the rest of the content motion. But there is a huge challenge to make sure that those executives are regularly posting this content that we produce. It is like,
Man,
that's the hardest part of it all, you know?
we've dabbled in that, and my goodness, that is so stinking hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
To
So,
have individual team, I mean, whether it is an executive or a mid-tier targeter, marketer, to share their unique perspective, even given the frameworks and the content structures and all that, to
yeah.
just take the action. And they can
Yeah.
say that they see the value, but to do it, yeah, it's been a challenge.
It's hard. It's really hard. And so the way we think about it now and why we've kind of shifted from direct exec social to this company motion where we can derive content from various interviews, and that might be the executive themselves, which is great.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it might not be, and we're still creating executive content for this individual to post out there, but it's derived from other interviews and other insights that they're sharing then. The reason we do that is because we can be more consistent, and a content motion is only as effective as its consistency, right?
Hmm.
And if there's an inconsistent pattern where the exec's like, all right, I'm in a fundraising round, I can't get this. This is the least lowest thing on my list. Lights aren't off entirely. We can still run this whole motion and have the lights on even while the executive is underwater with other priorities, which happens all the time. I'm one of them. I know how hard it is to be consistent, and the last thing on my list is my own personal brand. It's about the company and my team and everything but me, right? Um, this like you have more flexibility because you can make sure this content motion is always on. And if the executive, and we push for this really hard, but if the executive is posting regularly, or alternate path, they're taking the content we're producing for the executive and they're disseminating it to the rest of their team to say, hey,
Hmm.
tweak this and run with it. um, at the very least, there's stuff going on behind the scenes, and the executive is a huge amplifier.
Yeah.
But isn't like the one and only. So it's like lights off, lights on, lights off, lights
Yeah.
on. Lights are always on,
That's great.
and it's amplified by the executive. So that's kind of the thought process behind that. But it is the consistency there. It's just tough because of the seat, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
Well, 2 years in, at least to this endeavor, I would love to, maybe as we're wrapping up on time, to just hear some your personal personal, what are things that have just lit a fire under you, and particularly around what the last 2 years has looked like for you and Story Arb. Has there been maybe a rewarding moment in helping a client bring their vision to life through story? Is there maybe a client you work? I mean, you don't necessarily have to say their name, but maybe an example that you could give that this was just like, man, this one, there's just something about this one that just lit
Mm,
me up.
oh my gosh, there's so many. Um, there's so many. Okay, I'm gonna pick on one, and I can definitely share their name. I might tell us a couple stories here. So yeah, Experts Exchange is a tech community, and they came to us early on, pre Flywheel, for a newsletter. They just wanted the newsletter component, and we stood that up for them, and now it's a weekly motion, and I wish I could tell you, like, so we're talking to tech folks, right?
Mhm.
IT people. That's a tough ICP to make,
Yeah.
and tough content to make interesting, by the way. uh, but we really zoned in and honed in to who we were talking to, what made them tick, what their demographic was, like age range, what they cared about. And the client was like willing to have a little fun, which is the most fun. I swear to you, uh, any brand out there, if you are willing to have a little fun with the content you're producing, I know it's scary, but it works so much better.
Yes.
Um,
Because you're talking to humans.
because
This
you're
is it.
talking to humans and they're working. Give
Yes.
them a little something to smile about, right? And so we stood up their newsletter. You got to check it out. Experts Exchange is the site. Their newsletter is bite size, and it hit so hard, and it has been such a tremendous value to them and to their community. The amount of email replies that come in. Alex Lieberman, my co-founder, he's like he said early on when he was building Morning Brew, that was like such an indicator of their success, was just the replies they would get
Yeah. Yeah.
from their readers. And same with Experts Exchange, it's like insane the amount of feedback and hilarious replies they get from their readers who just adore the content, and it's of great value, but it's entertaining at the same time, and it is
Yeah.
just blown up, and it's so fun to see consistency. They're like, well, we were like going to them for renewal. Will you sign this 12-month contract? I'm like, bro, you gotta fire us if you're gonna have to be the one to fire us, not the other way around. So it's just been such a fun relationship, and just going from zero to this incredible community, engaged and active with them. Just through content and words, and having a little fun with the framing of the content has been incredibly rewarding. That's just one little story, but there's
That's
just so
awesome.
many.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, what is, uh, other than the obvious answer, which is to fill out a lead form on StoryArb's website,
Yeah.
if for one piece of advice you'd give to marketers or leaders listening who want to elevate their own storytelling starting today? They've heard this, they've seen it's that small team shop that's they don't have the
Mhm.
time to do it. What's something they can be implementing today to get this in motion?
Reframe. Take a look at the messaging, and I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but what they can do today on their own is take a look at the way that they're going out there with content and spin it so it's less about them and more about the reader. Make it about the reader. Reframe is probably the simplest and most often made mistake in content, and it does take just an extra second to and a level of thoughtfulness to change the way that you're sharing that messaging. But that's probably the number one thing internally. Externally, of course, you can chat with our team. We know it's hard. We know there's time constraints, and that reframing does take an extra step and a level of thoughtfulness, which is time you don't have. So that's why we're here. We're here to be a support to marketers, standing up that content motion, so that we can have the lights on all the time. And it's almost like this level of relief for a marketer to go, okay, I know this thing is running over here. My pipeline is being activated by this content, and my ICP, most importantly, is being served well, right? And so now I can be more proactive and working on other things within the company. So reach out to the Arb. You can email me at abby@storyarb.com, or head to our site and submit from there and just kind of evaluate the offering. But we would be happy to be a support. I'm also happy to be just a support and sounding board if you're not ready to take that step, but you want to just chat through strategy. More than happy to set up some time and just talk through some of the hurdles and take a look at some of the framing and give tips and tricks. Happy to be a resource in that way as well.
Yeah, very, very gracious of you. So storyarb.com. Abby, where do we find you in your personal profiles online?
LinkedIn is probably your best bet. LinkedIn and Instagram if you want to follow me personally, but I don't do a good job of keeping up with that. So it's just Abby Murray is my LinkedIn handle, and Abby J. Murray on Insta. And would love to connect, and over email works great too. So would love to connect, would love to be a support system for y'all, and really appreciate the time to share the story of our world with you.
Yeah. Abby, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Elevator People. It would be an honor if you subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, and check out our agency website at whiteboard.is to help you and your team make your vision visible.